Yep. Richard, let's get to it. What is your one big thing this week?
Well, typically, actually, we usually coordinate a little more than we did today. We both we got on this morning. What's your one big thing? And usually this is done 2 days or whatever in advance. So you're right. That was a teaser. My one big thing is the automotive industry. But before we get into that, there's two things I need help with. One is actually kind of cool because as we get into this, like the military industrialization one big thing I did last week, we had done segments before. So I'm looking at the automotive manufacturing sector for my one big thing this week. This harks back to a one big thing I did in November 2021. So we're getting some longitudinal, timeline coverage now in the 966. The other thing and I mentioned it, and it keeps coming back up, like the regional HQ, like the military industrialization. We have to come up with a phrase. We don't have to do anything, but it'd be good if we came up with a phrase along the lines of, "Oh, I guess this is going to happen," because so many of the things we talk about were speculative or just pie in the sky, or they were a launch, and now they're coming to fruition or they're becoming much more real. And I don't know what the appropriate phrase is. I think I said it last week, something like, "Oh, this is really going to happen." But this is sort of like my one big thing this week, which is an automotive industry. So let me just take you back to November 2020. Let's go back in the time lapse machine. November 2021. I did a piece on the automotive industry. And in that, I said, pointed out, all right, this is under the National Industrial Development and Logistics Program. And we talked about how they've wanted to develop an automotive industry for decades, for all the reasons we know. There's a huge market. It's a significant employer. It transfers technology, promotes manufacturing, all these, beneficial things. So let me just quote what I said from there. Saudi Arabia allocated land for the construction of a vehicle assembly plant in April 2019 with capacity to produce between 10,000 and 30,000 cars annually, and aiming to reach a steady production volume of 110,000 to 150,000 by 2026. All right. This was in Jubail, out in the east, on the Gulf side of Saudi Arabia. And it was a joint venture between the Saudi National Automobile Manufacturing Company, SNAM, and South Korean company, SsangYong. All right. So in that particular part of the one big thing closes, despite further outreach, Saudi Arabia has not secured a major manufacturer by the goal of 2020. An industry source familiar with ongoing Toyota talks said, quote, "Nobody would say no, full stop, but they politely conveyed they're not interested," unquote. All right. So fast forward to today. Fast forward to the last few months. And I'll do this in sort of try and do it in chronological order. So SNAM, the Saudi National Automotive Manufacturing Company, was actually established in 2013. They had this JV with SsangYong, but nothing had gone forward. They had the plot out of Jubail. Nothing had gone forward. However, just recently, SNAM, as part of a very large South Korean delegation into Saudi Arabia, it just happened, where any number, billions and billions of dollars MOUs were signed. Part of that was that essentially renewed this SNAM Jubail manufacturing capability. So SsangYong is now KG Mobility. And as part of this delegation, they are signing on to move this forward and essentially establish, and this would be internal combustion engines for these vehicles, essentially establish a truly Saudi manufacturing capability out on the East Coast at the Jubail Economic Complex. So that's one thing. That was just announced. And I should say, so that's very recent in terms of getting a lot of energy. We know, and again, we're talking about the recent nature of this. This just happened in October. In September, as we know, Lucid, US-based Lucid Motors signed agreements to build a production factory in Kingdom with an annual capacity of 155,000 zero-emission electric vehicles. this is on the ground in King Abdullah Economic City. That manufacturing facility has been launched. So that's two. Uh, Going back in June, again this summer, CEER. CEER is a joint venture between the Public Investment Fund and Foxconn, and this is essentially to produce electric vehicles, design, manufacture, and sell a range of vehicles, including sedans and sports utility vehicles. So Sierra is moving along. These will be EVs. Just in the last 2 weeks, October 2023, Hyundai, third largest automaker worldwide in terms of sales volume, has made an agreement with the PIF. PIF will hold 70% stake in a new joint venture with Hyundai, having the remaining 30%, strategic technology partner to support and develop a new manufacturing plant. The total investment of the project is estimated to exceed $500 million. It will join Lucid at the King Abdullah Economic City. So in November 2021, we're talking about nothing's happened in the automotive industry. Today, 2 years later, right? Essentially, it's October 2023. We're looking at 4 ongoing viable entities: SNAM with a South Korean partner, Sear with Foxconn, Lucid obviously with a U.S. partner, and now Hyundai. All these things are sort of now moving in place. So to return to the earlier conversation about, oh, this is really happening. This is another example of, oh, this is really happening. Now, I'm loath sometimes to throw out goals. The Saudi Arabia wants to build 300,000, be able to build 300,000 vehicles by 2030. We don't know if they'll be at that point. And again, as we've mentioned many times before, it doesn't matter if they hit that exact number. If they're developing an automotive manufacturing ecosystem, that's what matters. And in all of these things, along with coming, and you can see we've talked about the game plan. That Hyundai motor company is a 70-30 split. Lucid got terrific incentives, $3.4 billion worth, I think, in terms of incentives to come. Obviously, Sear, same thing. The PIF in Saudi Arabia is making it very attractive for people to come. And for them, it's worth the trade-off because they want the technology, they want the manufacturing capability, and they want the jobs. So again, this is sort of an update like we did with the military industrialization program of where Saudi Arabia is now. And in just over the course of 2 years, it made tremendous leaps, not only in the internal combustion engine area, but in EVs. And you see all sorts of ancillary groups sort of, coming in support of the automotive manufacturing sector. For example, the Tasaru, which is National Automotive and Mobility Investment Company, is dedicated to localizing automotive supply chains. The Saudi PIF and Saudi Electricity Company have announced the Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Company, which plans to install over 5,000 electric car fast chargers. Transport General Authority has a vital role in all this in terms of using data and technology. Just today, right before we went on, there was an announcement of a PIF tie-up with Pirelli Tires to do a $550 million tire plant in Saudi Arabia. So you see different parts of this all coming together to try and build out a comprehensive and fully realized automotive ecosystem. And again, it's like so many things, you don't really see results sometimes till you're inside the 5-yard line. And you're starting to see a really promising the potential for actually realizing this automotive center that Saudi Arabia literally has chased for decades, craved for decades. And here we are in over the course of 2 years seeing real MOUs, real plants being put on the ground, real commitments. So it's an exciting time in that sector.
Yeah, I think dating back to, we talked about this in a previous episode, Richard, dating back to the Ghazal
Yeah, the
which I'm looking a
80s.
photo at right now. Yeah, this is a 2010 King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz University. Oh, sorry, King Saud University
Mock
um,
up.
mock up. Yeah, they did build a prototype. It looks like
They
on a
did.
Mercedes Benz platform. We talked about that as well. But anyway, this is a really good one big thing because I really like the analogy you used. This has taken a long time to get together. It's long been a goal for Saudi Arabia to do this, and you've really seen it snowball in the previous, weeks and months, even to now become sort of, within the 5 yard line, and all of these things are happening now. You mentioned at the very end there, Tasaru Mobility Investments. It's PIF, a new sort of investment company they have. I mean, and it's not just their investments into cars. You're seeing things like um, there's just an IPO for a car rental firm, Lumi, popping 30% in a stock market debut. You're seeing the entire ecosystem kind of build out. You mentioned Sear being built, developed now. Lucid's building a plant in Cake right now. You've mentioned that. Hyundai was the big news this week. Also Pirelli. There was also news over the last 6 or 8 months that sort of teased what was going on here. The kingdom signed a $5.6 billion deal with a Chinese EV company called Human Horizons, with the Ministry of Investment, an investment in an EV startup, Praveg Dynamics, to set up a manufacturing plant in Saudi Arabia. Renault backed EV startup Bianca, which signed a preliminary Saudi investment deal. Saudi Arabia also, through Saudi Aramco, took a share in Renault and Geely's internal combustion engine unit. So I'm just kind of echoing your point. You have these investments. It's not just Lucid and let's come build a car here and then Lucid will be the car. It's like you're building the whole industry, and you're inviting competitors to come in. You're investing in competitors abroad. You're doing all of these things to sort of basically put every piece in place so that the industry can be founded and have a foundation and then take off from there. And this FII in the last week, Richard, probably had half of these headlines that we read because all of these things were in the work for a while, and they used this opportunity to get these out the door. And it obviously, because it maximizes their amplification of the news when you're doing it from this event. And it's pretty cool to see this now take off. And just the other thing that I will add, it's a sort of a bit that I use when I visit over there, but people ask me what I think of Lucid when I'm in Saudi Arabia, and I always say, actually, my default on this is to ask Saudis, because Saudis are very, very into their cars. Typically, they're very sophisticated car owners. They were way ahead on things like the Toyota Land Cruiser, which basically lasts forever. They knew it was a well-built car before it was common knowledge it was a well-built car. So I'm always turning the question around to Saudis saying, what do you think of Lucid? If you like it, then I think that it might have a shot. But this is a good one, Richard. And I think this is important to kind of stay on top of, because we're obviously, like you said, on the 5 yard line, but they need to take the football into the end zone, to continue the metaphor. And that's where it's headed. So first and goal for Saudi.
Yeah, and we can even say that, I mean, they're not quite about ready to score, but they're over the they're over the 50 yard line, and they're headed, they're putting together a nice drive. To stick with the analogy, a couple things. You mentioned the FII. I actually think a lot of big news came out of this South Korea delegation.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. It's a very important delegation, and Saudi Arabia obviously is building. Has a significant economic ties with Asia, and that includes China, India, South Korea. But you really see it building its book and its trade interaction and engagement with India and South Korea. And from the U.S. perspective, particularly with South Korea, who's a very close U.S. ally, we got to like that. But I have a question for our listeners. So we mentioned the Ghazal, which is the first locally manufactured car in Saudi Arabia. It was made of carbon fiber. There was another one. It's called the Al Araba Signature Car #1. It was built in 2003 by the Al Araba company, and along with an Indian customizing and a modification design called DC Design. Only 5 of these were made, costing $270,000 each. I would, if any of our listeners or viewers knows where one is, talk about a rare automobile. And I've never seen a picture. I'll have to look it up now. An Al Araba Signature Car #1.
I think I got it. I think I got one here. Al Araba 1.
Uh-huh.
It actually looks kind of cool. This was what'd you say this was? 2000?
2003.
This certainly looks a lot more modern than the Gazelle.
The Gazelle was kind of clunky, wasn't it?
It was a little clunky. There was a trend in, I guess, whenever that came out, for things to be rounder in cars, which I really don't like. You know, like the
I
looks like an
agree.
egg kind of on the road.
It looks flabby.
Yeah, it looks flabby. This looks cool. I'm sending this to you now. I'm sorry for all the listeners and viewers who are just listening to us send links back and forth, but you got to see this actually. And you know what? I'm
Oh, look at
pretty
this.
sure you see it. Yeah, it's a
I
two-seater
meant, oh, it's a sedan.
sedan. It looks cool. It's got a hard
Oh,
top.
oh, look at the rear.
Yeah,
Wow.
the specs aren't too impressive though. 215 horsepower,
Oh,
top
yeah.
speed,
I
240.
think
Yeah,
what they did was whatever this Indian customizing thing, they basically put a really terrific shell on a Mazda or something like that. But that is pretty.
kind of cool. I don't know. Maybe bring the all Araba one back. Um,
Yeah.
down the line.
Well, and that'd be a good electric vehicle.
So who
Uh,
built this? We should get this guy
it
on the
said
podcast and ask
Al
him.
Araba Company, Fauzi Ayub Sabri, and an
Okay.
Indian customizing manufacturing. So yeah, if anybody, somebody owns one of these. There's 5 made. Somebody owns them. So that would be fun to. That would be a real collector's edition.
I love this, sending the listeners and viewers out on a wild goose chase for a very rare car that most probably have never seen before. But yeah, if anybody finds an owner of one of these 5 cars, we'll have a 966 t-shirt made and we'll
Absolutely.
send it to you.
And a mug. We'll throw
Just
in a
let us know
mug.
your size. Yeah, and a mug. You get the full merch package because we'd love to see this.
And,
So
and a flash drive. Isn't that all?
yeah, exactly, and a little pen and pad. Yep, get the whole conference experience.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We spare no expense. That's what you get.
Yeah.